everyone. Welcome to a new episode of kcrushamerica magazine's featured interview, and I'm your host, Carolyn Hines, film culture critic and journalist. And today is one of my special interviews for the 2025 Minikino International Short Film Festival, otherwise known as Minikino Film Week 11. And today I am joined by producer Brahmantyo Putra. Brahmantyo Putra. I had it right the first time and I said it wrong the second time. And he is at Minikino presenting the short film Crises of My Brother, and in Indonesian, Pergi Belum Kembali. And it's a short film about this young woman, Wulan, who's basically taken on the mission of her mother to seek justice for her brother who had died 25 years prior in the May 14th, 1998 massacre. It was a fire at the Klender Mall, and it's kind of like an unsolved mystery. There's been no real investigation into the fire within the last 25 years. And the film really talks about how Wulan has this, she doesn't see it as a burden, but during the film I could kind of see she kind of looks heavy. Mm-hmm. She looks like she's carrying this weight and this burden. And I noticed she never really looks up.
Yeah.
She's always looking down, and she's always looking at her mom, and she writes this poem about her brother, and that's where the lead up for the film begins. And her mother, Maria Sanu, is kind of stuck in a loop. Mm-hmm. She's never really moved on past 1998, mm-hmm. and she keeps talking about looking for her son, even though the son has died. And we'll get into all of that, and I'm producing a short film like this. But first of all, thank you for joining me, Brandon.
I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. For a start, how did you become a filmmaker in Indonesia, a producer in Indonesia?
That's a long story.
Tell it.
Okay. Fun fact. I wasn't actually planned to become a filmmaker.
Okay, you see, just before my previous interview today, my filmmaker, Alan Berg, said the same thing. He just kind of fell into producing.
Yeah, it's kind of like it just happens. So I was supposed to do major in doctor and medicine, completely 180. But so in high school, in Indonesia we have this thing called the science studies and the social studies class, in which you get separated between if your grades are good enough, you go to science. If your grades are not good, you go to the social studies class.
It's the same thing in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same thing in our secondary schools in the Caribbean.
And oh my god, chemistry was a hell.
I only really understood the periodic table when I took adult. I had to go to an adult high school in Canada to get my Canadian certificate to apply for college. Mm-hmm. And I only really started to understand the periodic table as an adult going to a chemistry class. But chemistry is hard.
And it's a new concept. We don't ever learn it before. Suddenly, bam, what's this? I don't know. Okay, social studies, you go. So that's the whole thing. And when I went to social studies, I kind of figured out what I want to do. And back then, YouTube was a big thing. We were talking 2010, 2011, 2013. YouTube was a big thing. And people want to be like filmmakers, making short films and put it on YouTube. And then I realized maybe I want to take film. I went to ask my parents, begged for them to send me to film school, which I succeeded. But then I realized in film school, I couldn't write a script.
Well, writing a script is not the same thing as writing an essay, right? So
yeah, it's
a report paper is completely different format and structure.
It's like when you gave someone a blank piece of paper, write something, write a script, write a story, and I'm like, I couldn't do that. And I'm like, but I still want to do film. I think there's something in it that kind of attracts me. And I ended up discovering into documentaries specifically because I like talking to people. And maybe the things you do, interviewing people, talking to them, building relationships. And just doing that for a couple of years until I'm really, really sure that documentary is just, my own path. And from then on, I've been helping directors my friends to shoot their own documentaries, and I hope that I'll have the courage or the bravery to direct my own film one day.
And what's it like being a producer for films, particularly documentary films in Indonesia? Because I get the feeling there's a lot of documentary films being made by young filmmakers in Indonesia, and I think a lot of it has to do with the history, the political history of Indonesia, right? There's like Indonesia is a nation of like I think
it's a huge archipelago, yeah.
It's a huge archipelago, so like it's a long chain of islands, and so much has happened on all of these islands, you know. And so there, Indonesia has, and of course I know like the bare minimum, but from what I do know is like there's a very deep and very intense and layered history to the politics of Indonesia, right? And like because there's like all of these indigenous tribes, and then there's things like the Jakarta massacres in the 1960s, which ties into anti-communism and the US and UK getting their hands in other people's businesses. But even the film like this, Traces of My Brother, which does still deal with a very specific incident in 1998, it still has like hints of a broader problem with regards to like how politicians don't give justice to their citizens because they see incidents like this one thing as inconsequential, right? And that is an offshoot of all the broader political history of Jakarta and then Indonesia as a whole. So like as a producer, like what is it like for you producing films like this, because they have such intense stories and such present implications for Indonesian people?
Yeah, I think especially like documentaries, I really like because we are actually uncovering a lot of the things ourselves, like with our own, you know, like first-hand experiences, talking to these victims, talking to these people, survivors, and I think there's like a little bit of, you know, like you kind of have to have a little bit of that sentimentality, you know, and some people maybe need to be guided, you know, like I've seen like some directors when they make stories, there's usually like 3 questions I ask them. Why this story? Why do you want to make this story? And why do you feel you're the right person to make the story? And these 3 questions are actually quite important because then it, you know, documentaries are very like it's a bit of a power dynamic between us and the people, right? So if you don't have the right intention for it, it feels like it's very exploitative. Like, oh my god, this character has a really interesting, like, you know, tragedy, trauma, but then like exploiting that story for your own benefit to, you know, further your career is something that, you know, I would like to avoid and maybe like tell other people not to do. And with those 3 questions, I usually am able to gauge people's intent as a producer when I'm doing their films, and also like a lot of times help them, you know, like open up new perspective on like how the film should be. Because sometimes you can put your own personal experiences as a director into a film that is about other people. And not just, you know, documenting another person's life, but you can also have your own, you know, like messaging, or like that's your role as a director. And the producer's role is to just like guide the director to achieve that, basically.
So you kind of have like an interview process for your filmmakers to see if they would work well with you, because there are some filmmakers like for instance like Allenberg, he had previously worked with the director of Water Sports, so they were familiar with each other. And before Water Sports they had produced another project together, right? So like they had a history before they even started working as director and producer. But for you, if you have a director who's approaching you to say like, would you produce my film, and it's someone that you don't have like a personal or even a professional history or connection with, you kind of go through like an interview process.
Yeah, like it helps really, like, because sometimes they couldn't answer the questions, and that's my answer, you know, like, oh, if you can't even answer these 3 simple questions, it means like you're not either not ready to make the film, or maybe you don't have that personal connection enough to the story. That why do you want to make the film?
And for the director of Traces of My Brother, Riani Singgih, like, what was she approached you to produce this film?
Basically, Riani and I, we went way back.
Right.
So when I came back to Indonesia, I used to study in Melbourne for 6 years. When I came back to Indonesia during the pandemic, she approached me first because there's not a lot of documentary filmmakers in Indonesia at that time, especially in Jakarta. And we kind of like started this whole production house together in 2020. And when it began, the way we learned how we work together is through making like short videos, like like short format documentaries. Like within 1 month, we try to make like 4 videos about the pandemic, like interviewing people, you know, like try, and through that process, I can understand like how she works and how I work myself and how we can kind of collaborate together. We research, we write, we shoot, we edit ourselves. So from start to finish, I can see and how we work well together.
And so for Tristan and my brother, when did the process for this begin? Like, how did she find out about Wulan and her mother?
Yeah. So this film was actually like a concept pitched to us. Basically, Crises of My Brother is part of a series called Bearded Chapters. This series is a series of videos that highlights Indonesia's, like, you know, maybe like bearded past, or like a little bit unknown, like hidden. And when we get approached to make films like this, specifically talking about 1998, us as like, you know, like third culture kids, and her, like she grew up mostly abroad for like most of her childhood, most of her adult life. She didn't really understand what happened behind May 1998. So even she herself felt like she's, you know, like she wanted to make this film so that she knows what happens behind May 1998. And Mall Klender is actually like a mall that she used to live very close to her house. In her childhood, she and her dad passed the mall quite often, and she always asked, why does the mall keep changing its name?
Right, I was reading up on the Wikipedia page, and like it's had like name changes.
Yeah, like name changes, you know, maybe to get rid of like all the bad energies, or like to, you know, cleanse it. So she asked her dad, like, why is this mall keep changing its name? And that question lingers. So I think it's the most personal connection to her about May 1998, about this mall. And when we researched about what happened, we got in contact with this network of survivors and families of victims from the May 1998 tragedy, and that's how we got introduced to Ibu Sanu and Wulan in the first place.
Were there any other possible candidates to be like the focus of the film? Because like there are isn't only just Wulan and her mother. There's some other families, and they have an interesting idea of a concept of network of successors, which I've never actually heard of before. And then so basically the network of successors is like the family members of those who died in the fire in 1990, because it was hundreds of people. It wasn't a small amount of people, it was hundreds of people. And the network of survivors is like, for instance, there's Maria, whose son died in the fire. The son's named Stevanus. And then there's Wulan, who's the daughter. And so she's like taking up the mantle of going forward with the process of seeking justice. And for instance, should Maria die and should Wulan die, and if Wulan has a child, that child will take on the mantle of seeking justice for Stefanus. And like that's the whole idea and the concept for all of the family members of these fire victims. And I thought it was so interesting, right? Whereas like they pass on the fight. So and so like, were there any other members in the network of successors that you possibly consider to be the leads or the main focus of the film?
I think because specifically we talk about the fire and Klender, right? Because again, that's the personal connection that Riani has to the tragedy. I think not a lot of families have this kind of relationship, you know, like some families actually like has either like, you know, the people like they passed away because of old age. Like if you see like Ibu Sanu is already like very old, like she's an old woman. And some of the either like daughters or sons, they don't want to continue the fight anymore. So finding Wulan is actually the family was introduced to us as like a best case, you know, scenario for like the network, I guess.
Yeah. And so like the network, there's something actually that happens in the film where they basically go to like a workshop that teaches them how to be in the network of successors and how to convince people of like siding with them. And I thought it was so fun. I thought it was so interesting where they actually have a class to teach them how to do this, you know, how do you approach the idea of seeking justice for your family member. And it's basically around, from what I gather from the film, it's about not only getting people to side with you, but like how do you hold protests? And like since it's not a large group of people, it's like when we saw it in the film, like it's always a small group of people.
Yeah.
But it's all about also learning the legalities of it as well.
Yes.
And so tell me about that, because I thought it was really interesting.
So in Indonesia, we have this organization called KCrush, which is part of the human rights organization in Indonesia. They do this kind of exercises because, like, people like Ilusando, right? They've built their own network. Like they made, like, you know, they meet other people. They meet, politicians. They meet like other human rights NGOs. But like that's a connection that they've built over the years. And in order for this like new generation of people to get to where they are, it requires a lot of effort.
Right.
And I think in order for them to be like kind of like fast tracked into like this whole activism, is to train them properly, formally train them. And it also helps bridging, bringing in, other, as you seen in the film, like other second generation victims, so that they can build their own network of, to fight for justice, basically. And through that, we learned that there's this whole way of telling your story, and like the way to tell your story can be like through poetry, songs, and in Wulan's case, it's through writing. And it's just basically, you just have to keep finding your own way, find your path, how you can advocate. You don't have to be like on the ground 24/7. You don't have to like yell on the streets, but trying to find your own way that is sustainable. Because if you can't find a sustainable way to seek justice, you are going to like tire yourself way too early and give up, basically.
So in talking about tiring out themselves in doing this exercise, as it's been 25 years, right? I want to talk a little bit about Wulan herself and like her mental health, her emotional health, because again, the film is based around this poem that she wrote about her brother. And it's about her missing her brother, and a brother that she's never even really known.
Exactly.
And she's missing him through the stories that her mother tells her of
and
this
other people.
And other people, right? And the thing is Stefanus, he died at 16. He had a very short life, unfortunately. And the way that her mother talks about him is that it's as though he's missing instead of dead. Right? Yeah. And I'm not being callous when I say this, but I feel like that has a very heavy weight on Wulan, because she's grieving for someone she's never really known.
Exactly.
And she has to carry this grief with her because her mother is carrying this grief. Her mother isn't letting this grief go. She's keeping this grief very present. And while I was watching the film, I just kept worrying about Wulan's mental health. I'm like, does she have a life outside of this? Because this is her mother's life. Her mother has been stuck in 1998 for 25 years. She keeps waiting for her son to come back home, even though she goes to a gravesite and memorializes it. And so talk about just watching Wulan go through this process, and like how you as a producer and Riani as a filmmaker has to be very careful of how Wulan works within the film. You have to make sure that you don't push her past her limits, but that you have to do this very fine balance of getting the story, because you have a story to make, you have a film to make, but also recognizing this young woman has a very heavy toll and a very heavy burden that she's carrying.
This is quite a sensitive topic, because actually, part of the film, you see that there's a lot of like notes about time, about like, okay, 9 a.m., 9 p.m., 5 a.m., I do this, I do that. It's because Wulan actually suffers from memory and anxiety issues. So she often has anxiety attacks and panic attacks, and her memory issues are quite, I would say, quite severe in a way that the reason why I wasn't able to shoot on the ground is because Wulan doesn't even remember me when I came, to visit, because I rarely visit her. And also Riani and Kinari is the one who often visits their house.
And Kinari is the
other producer.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, basically, so I couldn't be on the ground for because we have like other projects going on, but because Kinari and Riani is the one that's always on the ground, Wulan remembers them. And I think there's this one point that Riani also decided before we pursue the story about Wulan, because we actually, in the beginning, we actually wanted to film the story about Ibu Sanu. But then we shifted it towards Wulan as we learned about this, this burden that you can see. So Riani and Kinali actually took her to go to the fair. So they just went to the fair, like play with on the Ferris wheel, dinner and chat to bond, let's have this bond with Wulan, because I think Wulan rarely have, need kind of a safe space for her as well. So we try to be as slowly and as gentle as we can. And I think the project also gives us a lot of time to do this. It was almost like a year-long process. Like some documentaries you only have 5 days, right? Or a week, or 2 weeks, but we actually have a whole year. So we can build this relationship with her and get close until she's comfortable enough to talk about this. And with this concept of writing, and because maybe verbally it might be hard for her to verbally express her concerns or how she felt, but we see from her writing that she's feeling a lot of stuff, and that's why we just basically put that into the film. So this is her writing, and her letters and her way to express her burden, her guilt, maybe her longing to her brother. So just combine that.
Yeah, and speaking about the time, I noticed that Riani does something very interesting visually, where the documentary is about Wulan and about Maria's time, but it's also about Stefanus. It's also about Stefanus, and it's about Stefanus not only because that he died in the fire, but the way that Riani shoots the film, and then in the way that it's edited, is almost as if Stefanus is still there.
Yeah.
And at first I thought, for instance, there's these scenes, for instance, there's one reference where she talked where Riani is talking, no, sorry, not Riani, sorry, Wulan is talking about the day of when her brother went to the mall. It's she's giving a timestamp of that day, right, of what happened. And okay, so he went to say, okay, at this specific time is when he left home. At this specific time is when it's estimated that he went to the mall, right? And what's happened is, as this is happening, we see and then it talks about how he played football.
Yeah, he likes to play football.
He likes to play football, and we get this insert of this B-roll of boys playing on the football court. And it was only the second time that scene is replayed that I realized it's actually Wulan.
Yes.
And it's not just random boys in the neighborhood. It's actually Wulan. So it's Wulan is a replacement of Stefanus.
In a way,
it's just I just thought it was a really interesting way to shoot it and to edit the film, because again, the first one, because it's a lot of documentaries, if you're doing reenactments, you'll use on named characters, you have these people who are reenacting these events.
Yeah.
And that's what I thought that first sequence of the kids playing on the football field was. And then when it happens again, I got the camera comes in just a bit closer, so you see the glasses, and then you realize, wait, this is Wulan.
Yeah. Because
the first one is just the back, right? So you thought, and then at the side it's but you know what? It kind of feels almost, and maybe it wasn't Riani's intention, but the way you see is almost it's kind of almost eerie that Wulan is playing on the same football field where her brother played, and it feels almost as though she's stuck in this place of where he was at 16, in the memories that her mother told her of her brother doing these actions at 16.
Yeah, so it's not entirely accurate to say that these are the timelines of she trying to predict Stefanus's time. Right? It was more about her way of, because I've mentioned that she has memory issues,
right.
So that's just a way to diary and log her daily activities, basically. Right. But I think that one particular scene is what we like the most. When I saw the cut, I really like that too. So Riani put that scene is because I think we feel that Wulan is really trying to, fill in the shoes of Stefanus.
Right,
Step into that role. because like she's doing the things that she's doing, like he's doing.
That he did, right?
Yeah, and as you see, maybe like she also didn't really like dressing up as like, you know, as a girl.
She was dressing as a boy. I thought it was a boy at the first time. It was only when I saw the glasses that it was, oh wait, this is Wulan.
Exactly.
Right?
Like throughout the film, you don't see her, you know, like when maybe this is also just my interpretation of like why she does certain things this way, but I kind of feel like she's trying to fill in the shoes of her brother, because that's a figure that she kept hearing all her life and that she never knew and she never understand, and maybe this is a way to trying to understand this figure that she kept hearing about for like the last 25 years.
Yeah, I think it's that, but it's also like her mom almost kind of like gave up on raising her when the brother died, and it's not to speak ill of the brother, but it's like her mom is so stuck in the grief of this child that she lost when he was just 16. She's kind of like centered her entire being around this, right? And I understand that, because I don't have kids, but it's said that a parent losing a child is one of the most profound traumatic experiences for any adult, right? So like I can't imagine this, especially to lose in such a traumatic way, and when there's no answers being given. You know, there's no justice. No one with power within the government is seeking to give him justice, seeking to give him answers. So I understand that why her mother is so in this grief, but I can't help but think of like, what has this done to Wulan? You know, where she's like her entire being now as a successor is becoming this person is becoming this there's a particular word I'm looking for, but this goal, you know, that she has now, and it's like, but what will become of her life after this?
That's actually quite interesting, because I don't know about Ibu Sanu, because I can't imagine having to basically fight for this, you know, this thing, because I don't know if she had this, you know, continuing this fight because she feels obligated, you know, because like if she give up, then what about the other families, you know? But like at the same time, putting her in this like, you know, this cycle of like having to remember the grief, having to remember the tragedy. It's been 25 years. Does that take a toll on her mentally? You know, how does it take a toll to her between her and Wulan? I'm not sure I'm able to answer that.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, but just to putting myself there, you know, like having, for example, like, you know, losing someone, and then you have to live through that and constantly remind yourself that you lose that person for 25 years. I don't know how to deal with that. Basically.
Yeah, I don't think any of us would ever know, unless God forbid we're ever in this situation. But it's just for me, like, I understand Ibusanu's grief, but for me, the whole thing with the film is I was just worried about Wulan.
Yeah.
I'm just worried about her own mental health and her own emotional state. And then hear you say that she has panic attacks, she has memory issues, and for a lot of people, those kind of mental it's mental illness is triggered by trauma, you know, and I also understand her having memory issues. I have memory issues too, and like for me, like I have to see people constantly to remember their faces, right? So when I thought it was interesting when you said that she can't remember you because she doesn't see often. I'm like, I get that. I have to see people constantly to remember their faces. The funny thing is, I will remember clothes that people wear, but I remember faces is hard for me. So like, I want to ask you about that. About just not only with regards to just this, but also just like as a documentary filmmaker, where you will have these kind of situations where you have people who may be going through an extremely traumatic experience. But again, like we kind of were discussing earlier, as a filmmaker, and particularly as a documentary filmmaker, because documentaries are separate to fictional dramas, right? This one you're dealing with very real people, and you're dealing with present issues as you're filming.
Yeah.
You know, you're dealing with things like, for instance, you said that she has panic attacks. So if you're filming and she has a panic attack, you have to make sure that she is looked after. But then how do you, when you're making these films, have to come to terms with this is something that we may not have necessarily anticipated before we began filming?
Yeah, so I think the way that we do it is very holistically, but I don't think we back then had the capacity to provide any professional help because like I think just financially, because these families are also very they're also struggling basically, right? Like these families are basically living off the stipends, government
government stipends?
Stipends,
right,
yeah,
okay.
that the government gave them, and also like maybe donations from other people, because I don't remember if Wulan is actually working. Maybe like you can quote me on this, but like that don't quote me on this. Maybe like I can like seek further clarification from either Riani or I'll ask Wulan about it. But I don't think she's actually working.
I wondered about that. I wondered if she even had a regular job, or like, because she's going to like the training courses and stuff, but it was like there's no reference of her actually working or doing things for herself.
Yeah. So maybe I can try to look for that, but yeah, we couldn't really like also help them, and I think this kind of dilemma, like falls back into we as documentary filmmakers, how far are we our connection with our character should be, like basically because we owe them as much, because like we're getting their stories and everything. We owe it to them to basically take care of them after. But at the same time, we couldn't also like, because financially it's a lot of money, we couldn't personally give that. It's something that I was planning to do an impact campaign for the film, because impact campaign is like maybe like it's a thing that is now it's coming up in Indonesia, about how we can help these characters, like so the audience have something that they can do, to help the characters. Maybe you can set up donations, maybe you can set up fundraising, but it's just something that we just doesn't have the time and energy to do that for yet, and maybe we should. So it's something that I could go back and tell Riani that maybe it's something that we should do now. Yeah,
I think that would be great, because it's like you giving back to them,
exactly.
Like it's because like in the filming process they are giving a lot of themselves, allowing themselves to be vulnerable on camera for people they may never ever meet, like so many showing here at film festivals and showing and being vulnerable on screen and talking about their grief and showing these very fundamental aspects of their life and also of Jakarta and Polynesia. Jakarta and Indonesian history, so like I think that would be a great way to give back. But in talking about money now, talk about getting funding for a film I'm working within the Indonesian film industry.
So we kind of do like in my company at least, we kind of do like this cost budgeting system. Like I will handle the commercial projects so that Riani can handle the passion projects. But at the same time, we try to seek funding through co-productions internationally. Like either we seek grants, or like we go to festivals, we get the awards, or we seek Indonesian government money, like grants. But the Indonesian government is actually quite hard. Sometimes information are gatekept, or like process are so long and arduous that people just couldn't be bothered to go to the government to seek this kind of money. So what works for us for now is usually these projects that we are actually submitting to festivals are mostly commissioned projects. So like I've told you before, this is part of a series called Bigger Chapters, which is initiated by an NGO called Kurawal Foundation, which is advocating for free speech in Indonesia. So when we receive their grant to make one of the videos part of the series, this is what we make. Basically.
So you use that money to fund
like this film, this film. No, specifically this film. So like our films that we submitted to festivals are actually commissioned projects for a lot of the NGOs that we work with.
Oh, okay.
Our first documentary that we had in Minikino called Teguh, it's about this police officer who was dishonorably discharged because of his sexual orientation. It was actually a client project for the NGO that helps him legally to make the film.
Right.
But we make the film in a way that I think this is worthy for a festival, and we submit it to the festival. Our second film is a grant, basically a film we made by the British Council grant, I think, and the Indonesian government money. and then this film is another commission projects. So just like that. But mostly what we do is just, commercial projects to fund passion projects. As yeah.
Well, okay, I kind of understand that because there's one other interview, one other filmmaker that I know that I've interviewed, but also have we've become like close acquaintances. Nam Kung Sung, she's a South Korean filmmaker, and her most recent film, Time to Be Brave, Time to Be Strong, terrible memory, Time to Be Brave, I believe, was commissioned by the South Korean Human Rights Commission, and that film is about the K-pop industry, and the way the film is functioning. It's a dramatic feature film, but it's based on research on how the K-pop industry basically exploits its artists. Like the mental and the physical and emotional toll of being a K-pop artist in that specific industry. That industry is kind of like a conveyor belt. It brings in new talent all the time, and they decide and it uses them. Then like so many of them get pushed out, and that causes a very big toll, especially because of how exploitive it is. So her film was commissioned by the Human Rights Commission. So to hear you say that is like, it's kind of interesting how I don't think a lot of people realize that NGOs do commission films, and it's a very smart way of getting people to pay attention to specific social issues, right?
Yeah.
So it's not just about having forums and lectures and whatever. Like they use film as a medium to talk about issues and and commissioning filmmakers is a great way to, first of all, give them money, because give them money to make films about social issues. Like Nam Kung Sung, her first film before that, 90s, was about a young Korean woman who became pregnant and was seeking to have an abortion. And that was because in Korea, abortion was actually illegal up until around 2021, I believe. Between 2019 and 2021 is when they changed the law to decriminalize it. Decriminalize it, but it's still kind of like penalized.
Yeah.
Right? So like the film kind of centers around that, and so like those are the kind of films that she's interested in. But as an independent filmmaker, it's hard for her to get funding for those types of films. So like to have an NGO
to come in,
step in and say, okay, we want to commission you to make this specific film, but it's within the wheelhouse that you are operating in. So like you guys are the same way. You're like, we want to make these films about social issues, and it is great that we have these NGOs giving us money to do it, right? So even if you have passion projects like Traces of my brother, you still have all these other films that operate within the same wheelhouse, and I think that's such a great thing, to like have that kind of support and having these organizations recognizing that film is a great medium to discuss these issues.
Yeah, and also I think it's such a wasted potential to have these kind of NGOs to make films purely for like documenting a program, whereas this this effort and money and time could be like be put into like like a whole a whole campaign basically about the issue. Like festivals is part of one of the distribution strategy for it.
Right.
We can have discussion about it. Like this film have been screened in like a lot of focus group discussions, where we always invite Wulan and Ibu Sanu to attend. So like every time we have a screening in Jakarta, we always ask them to attend with us. Like all these festivals, all these focus group discussions, so that they can talk to Ibu Wulan and Ibu Sanu and Wulan about the actual, like what happened and like how they feel and what they like going forward. Because the main goal for this film is to educate the younger generation of Indonesians who doesn't actually know about what happened in 1998, even though it's only 25 years ago.
Right.
So I think we're going forward with that goal in mind, and festivals is one of it, and we can do so much with film, like combining with other films of the same theme. We can create programs, we can send it to people to have their own screenings in their own area. So there's like potentials with it.
There are, and we're gonna wrap soon. So I want to ask you, like, this film is now presenting here at Minikino and other film festivals globally. And as you mentioned, you have other projects happening at this right now, right? So like, how do you move forward balancing all of that? Like, you're traveling to a film festival, but also you're producing and managing a company yourself.
Riani hate me, to be honest. Like, she is currently Riani is back in Jakarta. we just went back from another documentary lab called Dogs by the Sea last week in Sanur, and a week before Minikino. So she had to leave after that lab, so she focused on her other feature film that she'll be DPing for. Meanwhile, I'm here in Minikino to represent the film alongside with Kinari, and basically like having sometimes the role of, I can see Riani sometimes in festivals across, all over the world, in Busan, in Berlin, in the Netherlands, and I'm like, back in the office doing work, and sometimes she has to do the same. So it's just like a juggle, like a dance kind of, and so that we don't stop completely. Yeah, but I think we do need a break.
Yeah. Oh, and I do have to ask, because I've been wondering about this, not just for you, but with like other producers in general. How does it work affording travel to all of these different countries?
Like money-wise?
Financially, yeah.
Financially, yeah. So I'm actually on a grant from the Indonesian ministry, like the cultural ministry. It's called Dana Interaksi Budaya. You can apply as an Indonesian filmmaker or as an art and artist. If you are going to like a festival, if you're going to like for art, for culture, you can apply for that, and you can get like either accommodation, flights, even like money, like daily allowances from the government. It's for these kind of like events, basically.
Oh, okay, cool. That's interesting. Because I wonder sometimes where, especially for a small production company, where it's like you're not like, for instance, you're not like a WB. Right? You're a small independent production company. So I've always wondered like about affording travel, especially because going to different countries costs different amounts of money. Like for instance, going to Europe would be completely different than going to the US, which is completely different in traveling within Indonesia and Southeast Asia. So I wondered about that.
So like the big umbrella of the grant is called Dana Indonesia from the Indonesian government, and you can even apply for like the grants I told you before. Like if you want to make a film, yes, procedures can be quite complicated, but like at least it's a way for us to get money from the government to support us. It's not like a completely like they abandoned us kind of situation. It's still there. You just have to go through the procedures, but sometimes we get supported.
And I think that is great. Thank you so much, Bram, for taking the time out of your very busy schedule and for talking with me about this film and about your company a little bit. I'm getting to learn a bit about how the Indonesian film industry works. So thank you for taking the time for talking with me.
My pleasure.
And congratulations to you and Riani and everyone involved with the film.
Thank you so much.
And that's it. Bye.